You're about to witness a rare instance where Logan Paul and Cliffe are in the same room, and Logan Paul takes this opportunity to really press Cliffe on the evidence for Christianity, which leads to a rather interesting conversation about the evidence for Jesus. I'm going to let that video play out, and then I'm going to give my thoughts in the back end. Let's get into it.
Okay, so the soul is the person that can be shaped by human experience. So like if you were to like run a simulation of like Cliffe, 100 simulations of the life of Cliffe in some future distant world, do you become a pastor in all 100 of those simulations? Is every one of those simulations, is Cliffe a good guy? Especially if the human experience that each Cliffe experience or goes through is different. And then does your soul become a different thing?
I don't think so, because that smacks of determinism. It's in the stars. It's written in the stars. You have to do this. You have to go down this path. No. When I fall down a set of stairs, I don't pick myself up at the bottom and say, phew, glad that's over. No, I pick myself up at the bottom and say, idiot, pick up your feet. Don't stumble down the stairs. It's really painful. In other words, it's not been predetermined. That's this whole issue of free will. That's why I hold you responsible and you hold me responsible for what I do, for what I say, because you know I don't have to do it.
It's not a script.
Exactly. It's not a script. This whole idea that God writes on a piece of paper, what you and I are going to do tomorrow, locks it in a bank vault, and then you and I have to do what's written on the paper. That's determinism. That's fatalism. No. No, we're human beings created in the image of God, which means God partially limits his power by giving us a free will, and then we choose what we do. But God does hold us responsible, and that's why I love what you pointed out about the importance of responsibility. But you know, Logan, you and Jesus are, I think, a little closer than you might realize when you talk about justice.
That's going to get clipped up, man.
Okay?
That was
justice.
That's going everywhere.
The reason is, why did Christ die on a cross? He didn't die on a cross because God is lovey-dovey. He died on a cross because God is just. And because God is just, the penalty for evil is death and hell. And Christ went to the cross, paid that penalty. Why? Because God's lovey-dovey? No, because God is just. The penalty for human evil must be paid. Oh, that's not cool. That's not cool. Oh, that's very cool. I understand you're an expectant father. Little baby coming into the world?
Little baby girl.
Your mom was bragging to me about it.
Yeah. Little baby girl.
Sounds good.
Yep.
All right, Logan. Now let's talk theoretically.
Okay.
Let's say somebody murders that little baby.
God damn it, Cliffe.
Didn't even get a chance to do anything. Didn't even make one video.
Good response, Logan.
Horrific. I wasn't expecting this. Cliffe,
All right.
come on, dude.
Good response.
Yo, that's the hook.
Sorry, Grandma.
Yo, sorry, Ma.
Ex-grandma.
She didn't make it.
Damn, dude.
Okay, I love your response.
What?
Why? Because you know very well that if the police or the judge lets that dude off scot-free, your baby does not matter. Now, what's fascinating is the way so many secular people will say, well, God's just love, so there's going to be no judgment. Really? So God doesn't judge the guy who murders my child? That's a clear statement on God's part. Your child, Cliffe, does not matter to me. Therefore, I will not judge the guy who murdered your kid. Well, let's get one thing straight. God doesn't care about your kid. Your kid does not matter to God. And that's a lie. Jesus said, no, God does care about every single one of us, which is why when we hurt each other, when we rape each other, when we cut each other off at the knees, God will judge us for that because he loves us because we matter to him. Does that make any sense?
It totally makes sense. I guess what I am looking for and what I have always struggled with is like the proof per se. Why Christianity? There's so many denominations out there, and to be able to like put your foot down on one, especially when they all have such positive teachings for the most part, it's just so hard for me. I just don't know if I'm willing to make that assertion just yet.
First of all, you're right. I can't prove God. But Logan, I think you've got God bearing down hard on you through your mom. I think it's real clear that your mom loves you.
Is that true, Ma? She holding the cross. Can you at least get a thumbs up or something?
She just holds up
the cross.
She's like, can't discuss the love of Logan.
But here's a cross.
And
I do love Jesus.
I don't think that your mom's love for you is simply a chemical reaction. I think your mom has made a decision over your entire life to care for you, to provide for you, to protect you, to sacrifice for you. That is far beyond an animal instinct. That is a free decision your precious mother has made to really love you, to really care for you. Love, the experience of love, points us to reality, including some type of God. Okay, then the next question is, but who is this God? And that's where Jesus Christ, Muhammad, Confucius, Buddhists, all the avatars of Hinduism come in, all claiming to be revealing God accurately. But the historical evidence is Jesus lived a sinless life. He never sinned once. In John chapter 8, he could look into the faces of his enemies and say, which one of you can prove me guilty of sin? And his enemies were silent. Secondly, he taught amazing ethical teachings that I think all of us respect highly. The Sermon on the Mount is obviously ethical genius. All right, profound ethical genius. The Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. So his lifestyle, his ethical teachings demand respect. Thirdly, you watch him die. At the moment of his most excruciating pain and agony, nailed to a wooden crossbeam, instead of cursing his enemies the way I would have, he prays, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Well, my respect for him skyrockets. But fourthly, and most importantly, 3 days after he dies, he physically, bodily rises from the dead, and over a period of 40 days, he appears to over 500 people who see him different times, different places, risen from the dead. Paul records in 1 Corinthians 15.
I have a question. How do you know that?
You know that in the same way that you know that George Washington was the first president of the United States, that you know that Adolf Hitler really committed the atrocities he did. It's called historical knowledge.
But those recent events those events you just cited happened much more recently.
Yes.
And are much more well documented
Yes.
than potentially 2,000 years of lost history.
Bingo, correct. But the great news is, in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we have a very, very reliable historical record based on over 5,800 Greek manuscripts, 10,000 manuscripts in the Latin Vulgate, and about 9,800 in Ethiopic, Coptic, Armenian, Syriac, Gothic, and Slavic.
Cliffe is right. We have an abundance of manuscript evidence. Scholars describe it as an embarrassment of riches of the evidence for the New Testament. But there are a lot of manuscript copies that have scribal errors, and it makes some people question the Bible's reliability. For example, there are scribal errors where there's missing punctuation, misspellings, maybe even whole sentences that are removed. And now some people believe that the Bible's been corrupted through being translated and translated and translated, going from English to Chinese to Italian to Mandarin. But that's not quite how it works. You go from the original Greek to Chinese, the original Greek to English. So that's not how it happens. As for the scribal errors, scholars have identified and corrected nearly all of them, and none of them affect any core Christian doctrines like Jesus dying on the cross for our sins. Even atheist New Testament scholar Bart Ehrman admits this fact, so that means that the doubts about the Bible's historical reliability are unfounded if you've done your research. And now this doesn't necessarily prove that the eyewitness accounts laid out in the Bible are true, but it does mean that they are historically reliable in the same way that we trust a history textbook. Now, in light of the evidence that Cliffe just presented here, Logan Paul is going to respond with some of his own emotional objections to Christianity, and let's see how Cliffe responds to that. Let's get back into it.
I'll be honest here. I don't love the sort of like exclusive club feeling, oh, you can get into heaven if you believe in Jesus, but everyone else is doomed. I don't love that, right? Because there are people who have the same amount of faith in their religion as you guys do in yours, who are putting their time, effort, energy, investing their whole lives into believing in a deity, and like according to you guys, they won't end up in a place that is paradise, even though they're leading a great life and have a great moral compass. Even the whole like gay marriage thing, like correct me if I'm wrong, right? But according to Christianity, like gay marriage isn't allowed to be a thing, and I know there's a lot of circumstances of like a gay child being resented and even alienated from their family because they have super religious parents, and I hear those stories, and like I hurt for those people because a decision is being made based on a set of beliefs that people are so bound to, but then they throw the love aside for someone in their family. Yep. And that kind of bothers me.
Sure. But remember, Logan, the legitimacy of faith is not determined by passion. If you're passionate about thin ice on a lake, I really believe this thin ice is going to hold me up. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You walk out on that thin ice, you're going through, sir.
Yeah.
So the legitimacy of faith is determined by the trustworthiness of the object of your faith. If it's thick ice and you believe just a little, and you step out on that ice, it's going to hold you up. And you know that. If you trust a criminal, he's going to rip you off. If you trust a reliable person, that's good. Now, here's where it really gets tricky. Let's be a skeptic, right? Let's doubt. Okay, let's start right in here in this room. I doubt you and I doubt you.
I doubt me too.
All right.
I think I doubt him.
Now, there's nothing wrong with
I
doubting.
doubt myself enough for all of us.
Exactly. Okay. But I can push that too far. I can get to the point where I say, in spite of the evidence that you two guys are reliable, I'm not going to trust you. I'm going to be a hyper skeptic. Skepticism is good, but when it turns into hyper skepticism, watch out. Why is it so dangerous?
Yeah, why?
Because I'll never have the privilege of being your friend. If I'm always skeptical about you, if I'm always doubting you, I will miss my friendship with both you and him.
That's an extreme. You know, you like hyper skepticism.
Right.
Sure,
I don't think I don't know if it's as extreme as you think. This is the person I was describing before. I'm so smart because I question everything. The issue with these people is you provide absolute proof that their questioning is leading them down the wrong path, and they're still unwilling to accept that as a proof point.
Hyper skepticism, sure, but like
becoming more prevalent.
Just to question and doubt and not accept everything you see at face value as truth. I don't think
Jesus said you better do that.
Oh, he did?
He said, beware of false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing. Inwardly, they are ferocious wolves, and they will eat your lunch.
Okay, but
Fair enough for you.
how can I subscribe to a faith when there are such obvious contradictions within the codex itself that make it really hard for me to say that makes sense?
Because if you live a life based purely on logic, to Cliff's point earlier, how could you believe in friendship, love, any of these things that have no natural explanation? There's no logical explanation as to why you feel love.
Okay, then why does an animal feel love? Why when a mother...
I don't know. You tell me. What's the logical explanation for the feeling of love?
Wait, so next time you see your wife, are you just going to say, hey, this is my oxytocin going off right now? We really don't have it.
That is what he would. No, that is what he would.
No, I love her. I love her.
But what is love then? If it's, from an atheist, if there's no God,
Yeah.
then it's just the oxytocin neurochemicals, cuddle chemicals.
At this point in humanity, I am unable to give you a scientific explanation. Question: if in 50 years the brain can be mapped out and you can say exactly why you feel what you feel, does the belief or the faith in Jesus go down? Because I think what's happening right now is people are getting turned on to the possible idea of more explanations for stuff and thus aren't turning to faith as frequently, I think.
All right, but I think you've raised an issue consistently now, Logan, that I'd like to address, which is science and faith in God, science and ethics, science and morality. All right, science can prove that if I put strychnine in grandma's tea, she will die. Science could never answer the question, in light of the fact that grandma's loaded, big stock portfolio, why should I not put strychnine in her tea, kill her in order to get the inheritance? Science can't answer that. That's an ethical question. Science is concerned with the process, the physical process. And that's wonderful. It's beautiful. But it cannot address the question, should I put strychnine in grandma's tea to get the inheritance?
Yep.
That's an ethical, moral question, has nothing to do with science. See, so that's why you've got to realize there is truth scientifically, very important, but there's also truth ethically, and there's also truth regarding God. And your good buddy has just talked about his experience, which is not a scientific thing, but it's his personal experience that took him out of drug addiction, right? So, but it's a different type of knowledge.
Totally makes sense.
Makes sense?
Because I can't explain why I feel certain things in the way I feel.
Good.
And if I were to seek explanation like I do with some things that maybe can be described with science, perhaps faith is a good answer to that.
It's crazy to see that at one point Logan Paul was mocking God in the past, but it seems like he's kind of turning over a new leaf and he's genuinely investigating the claims of Christianity. And in this investigation, I feel like Cliffe could have done a better job at explaining to Logan why hyper-skepticism is problematic. Because he touched on that he could miss out on good experiences with Logan, maybe friendship, but he didn't address that this hyper-skepticism is also illogical and self-defeating. Overly skeptical individuals will often claim that there is no objective truth or that all truth is relative, but Both of these statements are self-defeating. The first statement claims to be true while denying the existence of truth, and the second one claims to be objective while denying objectivity, so they both result in contradictions. If the skeptics acknowledge this, then they'd likely admit that truth does exist, but that it's just impossible for us to find out what it is. But again, this is another self-defeating statement because it asserts that it's true that we cannot know the truth, which is, again, contradictory. And if the skeptic is intellectually honest, then they'd have to accept that just because they don't know something doesn't mean that we can't know something is true. And so that raises the question, what can we know to be true about religious truth claims? Well, to start, I think a great place to look at is the extra biblical sources that come supporting the Bible. There are 11 that we know of that are pretty prominent. There's the historian Josephus, Tacitus, Mara bar Cyprian, Suetonius, the Talmud, Pliny II, Lucian, Celsus, Thales, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and James Ossuary. And they all testify to the fact that Jesus was a real historical person and that he really did die on the cross and suffered under Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, in either 30 or 33 AD. And his disciples believed that Jesus did rise from the dead and appeared to them post-mortem, and most of them went on to suffer and die for what they claimed to have saw. And human psychology says that people aren't willing to die for something that they know to be a lie. And we can historically verify the disciples' martyrdom and dying for this fact from the writing of the early church fathers like Tertullian, Polycarp, and Origen of Alexandria, and other ancient historians like I mentioned, Josephus and Eusebius. And now, if we want to investigate this further, I recommend checking out the video on screen right about here. It's Dr. Gary Habermas giving his minimal facts argument for the resurrection of Jesus that historians are not able to deny and led a generation of scholars to come to Christ from critically acclaimed academia. So if you want to see more evidence, I highly recommend checking out that video. With that being said, have a great day, y'all. Bye-bye.